Tom had been living in his grandmother's old cottage for about 2 months when he realized he hadn't really talked to anyone in weeks. Sure, he'd say thank you at the coffee shop or nod at people on his morning walks, but actual conversations? Those had stopped after the divorce papers were signed. The cottage sat just outside a small town where everyone seemed to know everyone. It wasn't his world. Tom was a city guy, used to the noise and the rush. But after everything fell apart with his marriage, his sister suggested he take some time away. The cottage had been sitting empty since his grandmother passed, and maybe, she said, he needed to clear his head. So there he was, 42 years old, starting over, and spending most of his time sketching buildings on paper that would never be built. Architecture had been his passion once. Now it just felt like another thing he'd lost along the way. The bookshop was the only place in town where Tom felt comfortable. It smelled like old paper and coffee, and the owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, never asked him personal questions. She'd just smile, point him toward new arrivals, and let him browse in peace. It was raining that Tuesday. Not a heavy rain, just that constant drizzle that makes everything look gray and tired. Tom was shaking off his jacket when he noticed the poetry section had been rearranged. He loved poetry, though he'd never admit it to his old friends back in the city. They'd think it was weird for an architect to spend his evenings reading verses about love and loss. He spotted it immediately. A worn copy of collected poems by his favorite writer. The cover was faded, the pages yellowed, but it was the edition his grandmother used to read from. Without thinking, he reached for it. His hand touched someone else's at the exact same moment. "Oh, sorry," they both said simultaneously, then laughed at the awkwardness of it all. Tom looked up and saw her for the first time. She had kind eyes, the sort that made you feel like she actually saw you, not just looked at you. Her hair was pulled back in a messy way that seemed effortless, and she wore a thick scarf despite it being indoors. "You can have it," Tom said, pulling his hand back. No, you grabbed it first," she insisted. "Besides, I've read this one before. I was just feeling nostalgic." They stood there for a moment, neither quite sure what to say next. The rain drummed against the shop window. Mrs. Patterson hummed softly behind the counter. "I'm Tom, by way," he finally said, immediately regretting how awkward it sounded. "Lisa," she replied with a warm smile. "Are you new in town? I haven't seen you around before." Tom explained about the cottage, keeping it vague about why he was there. Lisa nodded like she understood without him having to explain everything. She told him she'd moved to town a few months ago, working as a nurse but taking some time off to figure things out. "There's a coffee place next door," Tom heard himself say. "If you want to, we could talk about books or something." He couldn't remember the last time he'd asked someone to coffee. The words felt rusty coming out of his mouth. Lisa hesitated for just a second, then smiled. "You know what? That sounds nice. I could use some company." The coffee shop was warm and mostly empty. They sat by the window, watching people hurry past with umbrellas. What started as small talk about books somehow turned into hours of conversation. Lisa had this way of listening that made Tom want to keep talking, and before he knew it, he was telling her things he hadn't told anyone in months. She told him about her work, about how much she cared for her patients but how emotionally exhausting it could be. She'd spent years working in a big city hospital, and it had worn her down in ways she was only now starting to understand. "I needed to breathe," she said simply. "City life, it just consumes you after a while, you know?" Tom knew exactly what she meant. They met again the next day, and the day after that. It wasn't planned, not really. Tom would go for his morning walk and somehow end up at the bookshop, and Lisa would be there. Or she'd text him about a new coffee blend at the shop, and he'd show up and they'd sit and talk for hours. Within weeks, it felt like they'd known each other forever. Lisa would come by the cottage and Tom would show her his sketches. She'd lean over his shoulder, pointing at drawings and asking questions that made him think about his work differently. "Why don't you build anymore?" she asked one evening as they sat on the cottage porch, watching the sunset over the ocean. Tom shrugged. "Lost the passion for it, I guess. My marriage falling apart, it kind of took everything with it." Lisa was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think? I think you're still passionate. You just forgot how to let yourself feel it." Something about the way she said it made Tom realize she was right. He had shut down after the divorce, convinced that caring too much about anything only led to pain. But being around Lisa changed that. She had this energy about her, this way of seeing beauty in small things. A seagull landing on a fence post, the way light hit the water in the morning, the smell of rain on the street. She made him notice the world again. One night they were walking along the beach and Lisa started talking about this dream she had. She wanted to build something meaningful, a place where people could come together, where the community could gather and help each other, maybe a center with different programs, health services, art classes, support groups. That sounds amazing, Tom said. You should do it. I don't know how, Lisa admitted. I'm a nurse, not a builder. But I'm an architect, Tom said, feeling something spark inside him for the first time in months. We could figure it out together. Lisa stopped walking and turned to look at him. In the moonlight, her face was both hopeful and sad in a way Tom couldn't quite understand. You'd really help me with something like that? She asked softly. Of course, Tom said. I mean, why not? It would give me something to work toward again. Lisa smiled, but there was something in her eyes, something he couldn't read. Later, Tom would realize it was the moment she almost told him. Almost revealed the truth that would change everything between them. But instead, she just hugged him right there on the beach, holding on a little longer than usual. Thank you, she whispered. You have no idea what that means to me. Autumn turned the town beautiful. The trees along the main street burst into colors and the air got crisp and cool. Tom felt alive again. He'd wake up excited about the day, thinking about what he and Lisa might do. They'd drive to nearby towns, explore antique shops, try new restaurants, laugh at inside jokes that only made sense to them. He was falling for her. He knew it, and it scared him. After the divorce, he'd promised himself he wouldn't get hurt again. But Lisa was different. She made him want to take that risk. What Tom didn't know, what Lisa kept hidden behind her warm smiles and thoughtful conversations, was that she was keeping a secret. A secret that would soon shatter the perfect autumn they'd built together. The first time Tom noticed something was off, Lisa was reaching for a book on the top shelf at the bookshop. Her scarf slipped slightly and he caught a glimpse of her neck. There was a faint discoloration, almost like a bruise, but she quickly adjusted the fabric before he could see it clearly. You okay? He asked casually. Yeah, just clumsy me, she said with a laugh. But her hand lingered on her neck a moment longer than necessary. Then there were the phone calls. Lisa would step outside to answer, her voice low and serious. When she'd come back in, she'd be different, quieter, like she'd left part of herself outside with whoever was on the other end of that call. Tom tried not to worry. Everyone had their private stuff, their own struggles. He figured if it was important, she'd tell him eventually. But as November rolled in and the weather turned colder, he couldn't ignore it anymore. Lisa stopped ordering wine at dinner. She, who used to joke about needing a glass after a long day, suddenly switched to water or tea. When he pointed it out, she just said she was trying to be healthier. She started wearing long sleeves all the time, even indoors when his cottage was warm. And the scarves. Always the scarves. She had a collection of them now, different colors and patterns, but they all served the same purpose, covering her neck. The bathroom trips got longer, too. They'd be watching a movie and she'd excuse herself. 20 minutes later, she'd return with red-rimmed eyes, claiming allergies were acting up. Tom wanted to ask. The questions sat on his tongue every time they were together, but something held him back. Maybe it was fear. Fear that if he pushed, she'd pull away. Fear that whatever she was dealing with would be too much for him to handle. Then December came, bringing the first snow of the season. Lisa called him on a Thursday afternoon. Her voice sounded strange, tight and controlled, like she was holding back tears. Can you come over tonight? She asked. I need to talk to you about something. Tom's stomach dropped. Those words never meant anything good. His mind raced through possibilities. Was she moving away? Had she met someone else? Was she going to tell him this whole friendship was a mistake? Of course, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. What time? 7? And Tom, can you just listen? Please don't interrupt until I'm done. That made it worse. Tom spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog, barely able to focus on anything. He showed up at Lisa's apartment at 6:45, unable to wait any longer. Lisa's place was small but cozy. She decorated it with plants and soft lighting, making it feel like a sanctuary. Tonight, though, it felt different. Heavy. The air itself seemed to press down on them. She opened the door wearing sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair down around her shoulders. No scarf. That's when Tom saw them clearly. The swollen lymph nodes on her neck, visible even in the dim hallway light. "Come in," she said quietly. Lisa had made tea, which sat untouched on the coffee table as they sat on opposite ends of her couch. She pulled her knees to her chest, making herself small, and took a deep breath. "I'm sick, Tom," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really sick." Tom's heart started pounding. "What do you mean?" "Like the flu or I have cancer," she said, the words falling between them like stones. "Lymphoma. Stage 4. It's in my lymph nodes, my spleen, other places. The doctors, they gave me 6 months to a year. That was back in July." Tom felt like someone had punched him in the chest. He couldn't breathe right. The room started spinning slightly. "July," he managed to say. "But we met in September. You've known this whole time?" Lisa nodded, tears streaming down her face now. "I moved here because I wanted my last months to be peaceful. I was done with hospitals and cities and people looking at me with pity. I just wanted somewhere quiet by the ocean where I could, I don't know, prepare myself." "Why didn't you tell me?" Tom's voice cracked. He wasn't sure if he was angry or heartbroken or both. "Because I wasn't supposed to care about you," Lisa said, her voice rising. "You were supposed to be just someone I met at a bookshop. We'd chat sometimes, be friendly, and that would be it. But then we kept talking, and you were so kind and so broken in your own way, and I thought maybe we could help each other heal a little bit. Just as friends." "Just as friends," Tom repeated, the words tasting bitter. "But it didn't stay that way, did it?" Lisa continued. "I started falling for you, Tom. And that wasn't part of the plan. I was supposed to protect you from this, from getting hurt. But I was selfish. I liked being around you too much. I liked feeling normal for a few hours, feeling like I wasn't dying." Tom stood up, needing to move, to do something with the energy coursing through him. He paced to the window, looking out at the snow falling softly over the town. "How long do you have?" he asked, his back still to her. "The doctors say maybe 6 more months. Could be less. Could be slightly more with treatment, but the treatment makes me so sick that I'm not sure it's worth it." 6 months. Tom tried to process it. 6 months ago, he'd been signing divorce papers thinking his life was over. Now he'd found someone who made him want to live again, and she was telling him she was dying. "Are you doing treatment?" he asked. "I was. I stopped a few weeks ago. The side effects were too much, and the doctors said it might only buy me a few more weeks anyway. I'd rather feel okay for the time I have left than feel terrible just to stick around a little longer." Tom turned around to face her. Lisa looked so small on that couch, her eyes red from crying, her hands trembling slightly. "Does anyone else know?" he asked. "My parents. My brother. A few friends back home. But here? You're the only one." They sat in silence. The snow kept falling outside. The tea got cold. Tom's mind was spinning with thoughts he couldn't organize. He'd been through hard things before. The divorce had nearly broken him, but this was different. This was someone he cared about facing something he couldn't fix. "Say something," Lisa finally whispered. "Please." Tom sat back down next to her. "I don't know what to say. Part of me is angry that you didn't tell me sooner. Part of me understands why you didn't. Part of me wants to run away and protect myself from the pain that's coming. And part of me," he paused, looking at her face, memorizing every detail. "Part of me just wants to hold you and tell you it's going to be okay, even though we both know it's not." Lisa let out a sob and moved closer to him. Tom wrapped his arms around her, and they sat like that for a long time, crying together as the snow continued to fall outside. When Lisa finally pulled back, she wiped her eyes and tried to smile. "You should probably leave. Process this. Think about whether you want to stick around for what's coming. I won't blame you if you don't. This isn't what you signed up for." Tom stood to leave, his mind a mess of emotions. At the door, he turned back. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said. "Okay," Lisa replied, but her voice said she didn't believe him. As Tom walked through the snow back to his cottage, he realized his life had just split into before and after. Before he knew Lisa was dying, and after, nothing would ever be the same again. Tom didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, watching shadows move across the room as clouds passed over the moon. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lisa's face as she told him about the cancer. The fear in her eyes, the resignation, the apology. Why was she apologizing? For getting sick? For letting him care about her? For existing? His phone sat on the nightstand, silent. He picked it up a dozen times, typed messages, then deleted them. What do you even say to someone in her situation? Everything felt wrong. Too casual. Too heavy. Too much or not enough. By morning, Tom still hadn't slept. He made coffee and sat on the porch despite the cold, wrapping himself in his grandmother's old quilt. The ocean was rough, waves crashing against the shore with an anger that matched how he felt inside. His sister called around 9. She had that sixth sense for when something was wrong. "You sound terrible," Rachel said. "What happened?" Tom told her everything. About meeting Lisa. About falling for her. About last night's revelation. Rachel listened without interrupting, which wasn't like her at all. When he finished, there was a long pause. "Tom," she finally said, her voice gentle but firm, "you need to be really careful here. I know you care about her, but you're barely over the divorce. You've been through so much already. This could destroy you." "I know," Tom said quietly. "Do you? 'Cause I watched you fall apart when Amy left. It took you months to even get out of bed, and that was just a marriage ending. Tom, this is someone dying. Can you handle that?" "I don't know," he admitted. "Then maybe you should walk away now before you're in too deep." "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to protect you." After they hung up, Tom's best friend David called. Rachel must have told him. David was more blunt. "This is a disaster waiting to happen," David said. "You fall for this woman, spend every day with her, and then watch her die. That's not romantic, man. That's trauma. You'll never recover from that." "Maybe some things are worth the pain," Tom said, but even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. "Don't be stupid," David shot back. "You're thinking with your heart, not your head. The smart thing, the healthy thing, is to step back. Be her friend from a distance. But don't get more involved. Don't fall deeper. Protect yourself." Everyone said the same thing. His sister. His friend. Even Mrs. Patterson at the bookshop, who'd somehow heard through the small-town grapevine, gave him a sad look and said, "That's a heavy burden to take on, dear." They were all right. Tom knew they were right. The logical choice was to step back to protect his heart, to survive this without adding more scars to the ones he already carried. For 3 days, he didn't call Lisa. He'd pick up the phone, start to dial, then stop. She didn't call him either. He wondered if she was relieved, if she'd expected this. Maybe she was used to people disappearing when things got hard. Tom spent those days working on his sketches, but he couldn't focus. He'd start drawing a building, and it would turn into the community center Lisa had dreamed about. He'd try to read, but every book reminded him of that day in the bookshop when they'd reached for the same copy. Everything reminded him of her. On the 4th day, Tom woke up with clarity. He'd spent all night wrestling with the question, what kind of life did he want to live? A safe one, where he protected himself from pain but also closed himself off from connection, or one where he showed up fully, even when the ending was already written. His grandmother used to say, "We're all dying, Tommy. Some of us just know our expiration date. That doesn't make their time less valuable." Tom pulled out his drafting paper and started sketching. Not aimlessly this time, but with purpose. He drew plans for the community center Lisa had described. He researched costs, made lists of materials, looked into local contractors and fundraising options. By afternoon, he had a thick folder full of plans and possibilities. He showed up at Lisa's apartment at 5 o'clock. She answered the door looking surprised and tired, wearing pajamas even though it was the middle of the day. "Tom," she said softly, "I didn't think you'd come. Can I come in?" They sat at her small kitchen table, and Tom spread out the folder in front of her. Lisa looked confused as she picked up the first page. "What is this?" "It's your community center," Tom said. "I've been working on it. I found a piece of land on the edge of town that's for sale. It's not huge, but it's enough. I've sketched out a basic design. Single story, accessible, lots of natural light. There's room for a medical clinic, meeting rooms, a kitchen, maybe an art studio. I've even started looking into grants and fundraising." Lisa's eyes filled with tears as she looked through the papers. "Tom, why did you do all this?" "Because I've been thinking about what you said," Tom replied. "About how you wanted something meaningful, about leaving something behind, and I realized I want that too. I've spent the last year feeling sorry for myself, hiding in my grandmother's cottage, acting like my life was over because my marriage ended. But it's not over. I'm still here. You're still here. And if we're here, we should do something that matters. But I'm dying, Lisa said, her voice breaking. I know, Tom said. And that's terrible and unfair, and I hate it. But you're not dead yet. You're sitting right here, right now. So what do we do with right now? Do we waste it being sad about the future? Or do we use it to build something? Lisa wiped her tears. Everyone told you to walk away from me, didn't they? Tom nodded. Everyone. My sister, my best friend, even the lady at the bookshop. They all think I'm making a huge mistake. Maybe they're right, Lisa said quietly. Maybe, Tom admitted. Maybe this will break me. Maybe I'll regret it. Maybe I should protect myself and keep my distance. But you know what? I don't want to. I don't want to look back in 20 years and wonder what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to stay. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lisa reached across the table and took his hand. I can't promise you a future, she said. I know. I can't promise you won't get hurt. I know. All I can promise is right now today, maybe tomorrow. However many days I have left, Tom squeezed her hand. Then let's make those days count. That night they stood on Lisa's small balcony watching the stars come out. The cold bit at their faces, but neither wanted to go inside. Tom had his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him. You don't want me to go, Lisa whispered suddenly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. A truth that cut through every defense Tom had tried to build around his heart. And with those words, something inside him broke open. All the fear, all the grief about what was coming, all the love he'd been afraid to feel. It all came flooding out. Tom turned to Lisa and just held her as he cried, really cried, for the first time since she'd told him. No, he finally said. I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go at all. They stood there under the stars, holding each other, both knowing the road ahead would be impossibly hard, but they'd walk it together for however long they could. Winter gave way to spring in the kind of slow, beautiful way that only happens in small towns by the sea. Ice melted from the streets. Flowers started pushing through the ground. Birds returned to build nests in the trees along Main Street. Tom and Lisa spent those months living with an intensity that most people never experience. They didn't talk about death. They didn't count down days. They just lived. The community center project became their shared purpose. Tom worked on the designs late into the night, constantly tweaking and improving them. Lisa, even on days when she felt weak, would sit beside him offering ideas, imagining how the space would look, how it would feel to walk through those doors. There should be big windows in the main room, she said one evening, pointing at his sketch, so people can see the sky. When you're going through hard things, you need to remember there's a whole world out there. Tom added the windows. They presented the project to the town council in March. Tom was nervous, his hand shaking slightly as he laid out the plans on the conference table. But Lisa spoke with such passion about what the center could offer that within 30 minutes they had approval to move forward. This town needs something like this, one council member said. We've needed it for years. Fundraising happened faster than either of them expected. Local businesses donated money. The church held a bake sale. The high school did a car wash. People in town who'd never met Lisa came up to her on the street to hand her checks, saying they believed in the vision. I can't believe how much people care, Lisa said one afternoon as they counted donations in her kitchen. They're not just supporting the center, Tom told her. They're supporting you. You've given them something to rally around. By April, they had enough money to break ground. Tom hired a local construction crew, and on a bright Saturday morning, dozens of volunteers showed up with shovels and work gloves. Lisa wore a yellow sundress that day, the first time Tom had seen her in anything but long sleeves and scarves in months. She'd lost weight, and the illness was visible now in the hollows of her cheeks and the slowness of her movements. But her smile was radiant as she watched the first shovel bite into the earth. We're really doing this, she whispered to Tom. We really are, he said, wrapping his arm around her waist to support her. The center started taking shape. Walls went up. A roof appeared. Windows were installed, the big ones Lisa had insisted on, letting light flood into what would become the main gathering space. On her good days, Lisa would be at the construction site directing volunteers, making decisions about paint colors and flooring. On her bad days, Tom would bring her there in a wheelchair, and she'd sit bundled in blankets, watching and smiling. The town fell in love with her. Mrs. Patterson from the bookshop would bring her tea. The owner of the diner sent over lunch every day for the whole crew. Teenage volunteers would sit with Lisa during breaks, listening to her stories, asking her advice about their lives. "You've become the heart of this place," Tom told her one evening as they drove home from the site. "No," Lisa said. "The center is. I'm just glad I got to be part of building it." They took a road trip in May before Lisa got too weak to travel. They drove up the coast, stopping at every small town that looked interesting. They ate ice cream on docks, watched sunsets from beach parking lots, stayed in cheap motels that smelled like salt and old carpet. One night, in a tiny town whose name Tom could never remember, they sat on a pier with their feet dangling over the water. The sky was full of stars. "If you could go back," Lisa asked quietly, "to that day in the bookshop, knowing everything that would happen, would you still reach for that book?" Tom didn't hesitate. "Yes, every time. I'd reach for it every time." Lisa leaned her head on his shoulder. "Me too." She taught him to sail that month. A local fisherman had an old boat he was willing to lend them, and despite having no experience, Tom found himself on the ocean with Lisa trying to explain port and starboard while laughing at his confusion. "You're an architect," she teased as he struggled with the ropes. "You understand structures and physics. How is this so hard for you?" "Buildings don't move," Tom protested. "Buildings stay where you put them." They ended up drifting more than sailing, but neither cared. They just floated on the water, feeling the sun on their faces, existing in a moment that felt suspended outside of time. June was harder. Lisa's body started failing in ways neither of them could ignore. She'd get winded walking from her car to the construction site. Some mornings she couldn't get out of bed. The pain medication made her foggy and she hated how it felt. "I'm disappearing," she told Tom one night, crying in his arms. "I can feel myself disappearing." "You're not disappearing," Tom said fiercely. "You're right here. I can feel you. You're right here with me." When Lisa lost her hair from a last-ditch round of treatment she'd agreed to try, Tom shaved his head in solidarity. They stood in her bathroom together, looking at themselves in the mirror, both bald, both crying and laughing at the same time. "We look ridiculous," Lisa said. "We look beautiful," Tom corrected. The nights were the hardest. Pain would keep Lisa awake, and Tom would sit up with her, reading aloud from books until his voice went hoarse. Sometimes they'd just hold hands in the darkness, not talking, just being together. "I'm sorry," Lisa would whisper. "I'm so sorry you have to go through this." "Stop apologizing," Tom would tell her every time. "You didn't choose this. And I chose to stay. That was my decision." The community center opened in July. It wasn't finished. The interior still needed work, and there were punch list items for the contractors, but the structure was complete. The walls were up. The roof was on. The windows let in that beautiful light Lisa had imagined. They held a small celebration on site. People brought food and drinks. Children ran through the empty rooms, their laughter echoing off the walls. Lisa sat in a comfortable chair they'd brought from her apartment, too weak to stand for long. But her eyes took in everything. Tom watched her watching the children play, and he saw something he'd never seen before: peace. Real peace. Not the kind you fake to make others comfortable, but the genuine article. "We did something that will last," Lisa said quietly, reaching for Tom's hand. "We did," Tom agreed. "Even after I'm gone, this will be here. People will come here. They'll help each other. They'll build community. We made that happen." Tom knelt beside her chair. "You made that happen. You dreamed it." "I just drew the pictures," Lisa shook her head. "We made it happen together. That's the whole point. Either of us could have done this alone." As the sun set that evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Tom stood with Lisa in the doorway of the center they'd built. Her arm was around his waist, his around her shoulders, and for just a moment, everything was perfect. Neither of them said it out loud, but they both knew. This was the beginning of the end. August came with heat that seemed to press down on everything. Lisa moved into Tom's cottage during the second week of the month. She was too weak to manage stairs anymore, and her apartment was on the second floor. Tom set up the bedroom so she could see the ocean through the window. She spent most of her days there now, drifting in and out of sleep. The hospice nurse, a kind woman named Patricia, came twice a day to check on Lisa and adjust her medications. She taught Tom how to help with the things Lisa could no longer do for herself, explaining everything with patience and compassion. "You're doing good," Patricia would tell him. "This is the hardest thing in the world and you're showing up for her. That matters more than you know." But it didn't feel like enough. Nothing felt like enough. Tom wanted to fix this, to architect a solution like he would for a building problem. But there was no blueprint for this. No design that could save her. Lisa slept more than she was awake now. The pain medication kept her comfortable but distant. Sometimes she'd wake up confused about where she was or what day it was. Those moments terrified Tom more than anything else. But there were still good moments. Small windows of clarity when Lisa would be herself again. One afternoon she woke up and asked Tom to open all the windows. He did, and the sound of waves filled the room along with the smell of salt air. "Tell me about the center," Lisa said, her voice weak but clear. "What's happening there?" Tom told her about the programs that were starting. A support group for people dealing with illness, art classes for kids, a community garden in the side yard. The local doctor had agreed to hold clinic hours twice a week for people who couldn't afford regular health care. "It's exactly what you imagine," Tom said, holding her hand. "Maybe even better," Lisa smiled. "Promise me something?" "Anything. Don't let it die with me. Keep it going. Make sure people know they can go there when they need help. That's what it's for." "I promise," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. Mrs. Patterson visited often, bringing books and reading to Lisa when she was awake enough to listen. David, Tom's friend who'd told him to walk away months ago, came by and quietly apologized to both of them. "I was wrong," David said simply. "What you two have, it's worth whatever comes next." The neighbors, people Tom barely knew, started leaving food on the porch. Casseroles, soups, fresh bread. No one rang the doorbell or asked for anything. They just left the food with small notes. "Thinking of you. We're here if you need anything. Sending love." Lisa's brother flew in from across the country during the 3rd week of August. He sat by her bed for 2 days holding her hand, telling her stories about their childhood. When he left, he hugged Tom hard. "Thank you for loving my sister," he said. "Thank you for not leaving when things got hard." The end came on a Wednesday evening in late August. Lisa had been sleeping most of the day, her breathing shallow and irregular. Patricia had come by that afternoon and quietly told Tom it wouldn't be much longer.
"Maybe hours, maybe a day or two."
Tom pulled a chair next to the bed and just sat with her, holding her hand, watching the sun start to set through the window. The sky turned brilliant shades of orange and purple, like it was putting on one last show. At some point, Lisa's eyes opened. They were clear, really clear, for the first time in days. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey," Tom said back, trying to smile. The sunset. Tom adjusted her pillows so she could see better. They watched it together in silence. The waves crashed against the shore. Seagulls called to each other. The world kept spinning like it always had. "I'm scared," Lisa admitted quietly. "I know," Tom said. "Me too. Will you stay with me?" "I'm not going anywhere," Tom promised. "I'm right here. I'll always be right here." Lisa squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. "Thank you. For all of it. For the center. For the time. For not running away. Thank you," Tom said back. "For teaching me how to live again. For showing me that love doesn't have to last forever to be real." They sat in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. The room grew darker, but Tom didn't turn on the lights. He just held Lisa's hand and listened to her breathe. Around 9 o'clock, her breathing changed. It became slower, more spaced out. Tom climbed carefully onto the bed next to her, wrapping his arm around her shoulders, cradling her against his chest. "It's okay," he whispered. "You can let go. I'll be okay. The center will be okay. Everything will be okay." Lisa took one more breath, then another, then nothing. Tom sat there holding her for a long time, crying silently, feeling her body grow still and cool against his. The ocean kept making its endless noise outside. The world didn't stop. It just kept going like it always would, even though his world had just completely changed. When Patricia arrived the next morning as scheduled, she found Tom still sitting on the bed, still holding Lisa's hand. She called the funeral home, made the necessary calls, and gently helped Tom through the next steps. "You did good," Patricia said before she left. She wasn't alone. That's the most important thing. She wasn't alone at the end. The funeral was small, held at the community center because that's what Lisa had wanted. People from town filled the space, sharing stories about how Lisa had touched their lives in the short time she'd been there. Tom couldn't speak. He sat in the front row staring at the floor, unable to process that this was real, that she was really gone, that he'd never hear her laugh again, never see her smile, never watch her eyes light up when she talked about something she cared about. The weeks after were impossibly dark. Tom moved through each day like a ghost. He'd wake up and forget for a moment that Lisa was gone. Then reality would crash back in and the grief would hit him all over again. He stopped working on the center. He stopped sketching. He stopped going to the bookshop. He just existed, barely, going through motions that felt empty and pointless. His sister came to stay with him for a week, making sure he ate, forcing him to shower, sitting with him when the grief became too heavy to carry alone. "I knew this would happen," Tom said one night, staring at nothing. "Everyone warned me. They said it would destroy me, and they were right." "But you don't regret it, do you?" Rachel asked gently. Tom was quiet for a long time. "No, I don't, but that doesn't make it hurt any less." David visited too, bringing takeout that Tom barely touched. "The center's sitting unfinished," David mentioned carefully. "The construction crew keeps asking what you want them to do." "I don't care," Tom said flatly. "Lisa would care," David said. Tom looked at his friend, anger flashing through the grief. "Don't do that. Don't tell me what she would want." "Okay," David said calmly. "Then I'll tell you what I see. I see someone who promised her he'd keep it going. I see someone who's breaking that promise because grief is easier than showing up." Tom wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because David was right. It took another week, but Tom finally drove to the community center. He sat in his truck outside for 20 minutes, unable to make himself go in. Finally, he forced himself out, forced his feet to carry him through the door. The place was exactly as they'd left it the day Lisa died. Half-finished walls, paint cans sitting in corners, construction materials stacked neatly. But something was different. People were there, volunteers working. Mrs. Patterson was painting one of the meeting rooms. The high school kids who'd helped before were installing shelving. The local contractor was there with his crew, working without having been called. "Tom," the contractor said when he spotted him, "we weren't sure when you'd be back. We couldn't let it sit unfinished. Not after everything Lisa put into this place." Tom looked around at all these people working, carrying on the vision Lisa had started. Something inside his chest loosened just a little. "What needs to be done?" Tom asked quietly. "A lot," the contractor said honestly. "But we'll get there. We'll finish this. For her." Tom rolled up his sleeves. "Then let's get to work." Over the following months, Tom threw himself into completing the center. It became his way of processing the grief, his way of keeping Lisa alive. Every wall he helped paint, every fixture he installed, every decision he made about the space, he did it thinking about what she would have wanted. The center officially opened in November, exactly 1 year after Lisa had told Tom about her diagnosis. The place was beautiful and complete, exactly as Lisa had envisioned it. Medical clinic rooms for the local doctor, meeting spaces for support groups, an art studio with those big windows letting in natural light, a community kitchen where people could gather and cook together. The opening ceremony drew the whole town. Tom stood at the front looking out at all the faces and finally found his voice. "A year ago, someone very special came into my life," he began. "She taught me that life isn't measured in years but in moments. In courage. In showing up even when things are hard. This center exists because she believed communities need places where they can support each other, where they can be vulnerable, where they can heal together." His voice cracked, but he pushed through. "She's not here to see it finished, but her spirit is in every corner of this building. And I hope that everyone who comes through these doors feels what I felt when I was with her. That you matter, that your time here is valuable, that love and community can exist even in the hardest circumstances." After the ceremony, people,